Hello and welcome to News Round, a recap of stories that made headlines during the week. I'm Ayotunde Balogun. The headlines. Supreme Court restrains the federal government from implementing the February 10th deadline for the old 200, 500 and 1,000 naira notes to stop being legal tenders. INEC insists there will be no extension of the deadline for the collection of permanent voter cards before the general elections. NNPC apologizes to Nigerians, promises fuel scarcity will ease in 1 week. Plus, 7.8 magnitude earthquake hits southern Turkey and northern Syria. Number of deaths in both countries exceeds 24,000. That's News Round in View. We begin News Round with the Supreme Court's ruling restraining the federal government from implementing the February 10th deadline for the old naira notes to stop being legal tender. In a unanimous ruling, a 7-man panel of the Supreme Court, led by Justice John Okoro, granted an interim injunction pending the determination of a notice in respect to the issue on February the 15th. Kaduna, Kogi, and Zamfara states had filed an ex parte motion on February the 3rd, asking the Apex Court to halt the CBN Naira redesign policy.
The Supreme Court is filled to its capacity with lawyers as the court entertains an ex parte motion filed by 3 states, namely Kaduna, Kogi, and Zamfara states. The states are challenging the February 10 deadline of the Central Bank of Nigeria when the old 200 naira, 500 naira, and 1,000 naira notes are expected to lose their status as legal tender. They maintain that the 10-day extension by the federal government is still insufficient to address the challenges trailing the policy. Moving the application, counsel for the applicants, Mr. Abdul Hakim Mustafa, urged the Apex Court to grant the application in the interest of justice and the well-being of Nigeria. Mr. Mustafa held that over 60% of Nigerians who do not have bank accounts do not have access to cash, and the number of citizens who do have accounts cannot access those accounts, as most of the banks have closed operations because of the policy. In its ruling, the Apex Court held that after a careful consideration of the ex parte motion, the application was granted as prayed. It made an order of interim injunction restraining the federal government through the CBN or the commercial banks from suspending or ending on January 10, 2023, the time frame within which the now older version of the 200 naira, 500 naira, and 1,000 naira notes may no longer be legal tender. The Apex Court held that this would be in place pending the hearing and determination of the applicant's motion on notice for interlocutory injunction.
We invoked the powers of the Supreme Court to hear this application. The reason for it is that as well-intentioned as this policy of federal government of redesign is working hardship all over the country, as we can all see, banks are being harassed, Nigerians are suffering needlessly, especially the downtrodden. Those in the urban areas, they're having problems, but it's more excruciating at the rural area. So these 3 state governments, Kaduna, Zamfara, and Kogi, deem it fit for us to invoke the powers of Supreme Court to intervene.
The court, in its wisdom, decided that something must be done because of the urgency. But the court has acted rightly in its own wisdom, directed that all processes must be there by 15th, that is Wednesday next week, for us to argue our various positions.
The court subsequently adjourned to February the 15th, 2023, for hearing of the substantive suit.
Meanwhile, the Attorney General of the Federation, Abubakar Malami, is asking the court to dismiss the suit challenging the Naira redesign policy of the CBN. In a plenary objection filed by the AGF through his lawyers, Mahmoud Magaji and Tijani Ghazali, the federal government argues that the Supreme Court lacks jurisdiction to entertain the suit. In court filings dated February the 8th, the AGF contends that the plaintiffs have equally not shown reasonable cause of action against the defendant. They are asking the Supreme Court to strike out the suit for lack of jurisdiction. Now, the Council of State has faulted the implementation of the Naira redesign policy, although members accepted the initiative by the Central Bank of Nigeria, the CBN. At its meeting, the Council also advised the President to print more money or allow old and new notes of the Naira circulate concurrently to ease tension in the country.
Former presidents of Nigeria, Goodluck Jonathan, Abdulsalami Abubakar and Yakubu Gowon are led by President Muhammadu Buhari into the chamber, where the Vice President is also present for the Council of State meeting. It's the first hybrid meeting of the Council as former President Olusegun Obasanjo attends virtually alongside 5 other governors. Members of the National Council of State, comprising the President of the Senate, Speaker of the House of Representatives, former Chief Justices of Nigeria, Governors of Borno, Ebonyi, Kaduna, Taraba, Gombe, Kwara, Lagos, and Service Chiefs are also present. The Governor of the Central Bank, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, Chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, and the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Usman Alkali Baba, are among those invited to brief the Council on crucial subjects, including the currency swap and the 2023 elections. After over 5 hours, the outcome is illuminated.
We are on course as far as election is concerned, and we are happy with the level of preparation by INEC and the institutions. And then 2, relating to the Naira redesign policy, the policy stands, but then the Council agreed that there is need for aggressive action.
Many views were proffered, particularly that the CBN governor should look into making sure that money is available, the new money is available in quantum. And there were suggestions too that if the new money is not in circulation or printing them could be difficult, the old money that hasn't been changed could be recirculated and pumped into circulation to ease the tension, particularly for the poor people in our society who just need a little sum of money to buy their food, buy their drugs for daily basis.
With all of the advice that has been given, the executive, they know what to do. And I think as we move on, Mr. President will make, his thoughts, and his views on all of that, but he will make them known to the nation.
The AGF also shares his thoughts on the recent Supreme Court's judgment on the currency swap.
Notwithstanding the fact that a matter is in court, it is not out of place for the parties, particularly the parties of interest, to consider and do the needful if the need arises, which may eventually translate into either the discontinuance of the action or perhaps filing of the terms of settlement or reconsideration.
The president had on February 3 asked for 7 days, which expires today, to resolve the crisis caused by the scarcity of the new Naira notes. Nigerians are expecting that the president would announce his position to ease all encumbrances. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
Still on the Naira redesign policy and ahead of the general elections, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has held 2 separate meetings with the governors of the Central Bank of Nigeria and the National Security Advisor, asking for their intervention for the successful conduct of this year's general elections. Now, the INEC chairman is specifically asking the CBN governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, to give the commission some form of waiver on the recent cash withdrawal limits set by the Apex Bank to enable the commission address peculiar logistics issues.
The INEC chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, is on a courtesy visit to the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, in Abuja. The meeting, which has 11 INEC national commissioners and some deputy governors of the CBN in attendance, is to seek the support of the CBN, especially with regard to the recent cash withdrawal policy.
In view of the recent policy involving the redesign of some denominations of our national currency and the limits placed on cash withdrawals and availability, we consider this meeting important in addressing some of the areas of concern with just 17 days to the 2023 general election.
We will make it available.
Thank you.
In his remarks, the CBN governor assures the INEC chairman that the Apex Bank will do all it can to assist the commission to conduct successful elections.
The central bank will not allow itself either to be used or itself to central bank to be seen as an agent that frustrated a positive outcome of that election. And if in this case, after making your electronic payment, you require some money to pay transporters, in this case cash, the assurance I give to you is that we will make it available.
Thank you.
Okay, now you. Yes. Okay.
The INEC chairman also held a separate meeting with the National Security Advisor. This time, the commission is concerned with security matters as he calls for the support of the security agencies for a peaceful conduct of the elections.
We are glad that additional security has been deployed to our facilities nationwide. We also note the increasing tempo of activities in many trouble spots nationwide. We are confident that these actions will further reassure voters, our personnel, service providers, and stakeholders of their safety during the elections and of a free, fair, and peaceful process.
The service chiefs at these meetings gave assurances for effective security during the polls.
We are prepared to checkmate the activities of those who are going to be adverse parties or those who do not even want the election to take place, and also provide a level playing ground for those who are willing to exercise their franchise to do so.
The general elections in Nigeria are less than 3 weeks away, and for the electoral umpire, this meeting with the security chiefs and that of the central bank are strategic for the success of the polls.
Welcome back on the news round. The NNPC Limited apologizes to Nigerians and promises fuel scarcity will ease in 1 week. Join us again. Welcome back. INEC says it will no longer adjust the schedule for the collection of the PVCs in the country. That's the permanent voter cards. This position was made known by a National Commissioner, May Agbamuchimbu, during a public hearing organized by the National Assembly Committees on INEC on the extent of implementation of the 2022 Electoral Act.
It's almost a year since the 2022 Electoral Act became effective. Since then, off-season elections, including 2 governorship elections, have been conducted using the new law. The National Assembly believes that as the general election approaches, it is important to ascertain the extent of the implementation of the new electoral law. That explains the reason behind this public hearing.
You will agree with me that this is a turning point for our nation, a time to test our democracy through a seamless and peaceful democratic transition.
Civil society organizations, international observers, and representatives of political parties make their observations and recommendations to the electoral umpire.
The hope we all have is that elections will hold as scheduled. The situation in the country is challenging for all of us, but what will help to reduce the tension and challenge that the country is faced with is the holding of the elections as scheduled.
People are worried. The recent case that's gone through to the Supreme Court, the judiciary has to be, the rule of law is the foundation of all democracy. Democracy doesn't exist without the rule of law. We need the judiciary to stand up, to be independent, and there's quite often a lot of pressure on the judiciary.
The Electoral Act has some lacunae that has been exploited by the judiciary. We are all aware that even though the portal for electoral processes have been closed, courts are still giving conflicting judgments regarding candidates in this election, including some candidates that did not even participate in primaries that have been imposed on INEC as we speak. One of them is your president here.
The electoral umpire responds.
The bills cannot be compromised because what we have ethical hackers who we use periodically to check the beavers, and I'm confident that we will not have issues regarding the beavers being compromised. And then the distribution of PVCs, yet again, it is a Nigerian problem. We have 1 year to collect your PVCs. People don't come. If we continue to move the timetables each time, we'll never have an election in this country. And we must appreciate that this country should move to greater heights, and it starts with the elections.
While the electoral umpire assures of its readiness to conduct free, fair and credible elections, civil society organizations fear that voter apathy and disenfranchisement could be recorded due to the difficulties being experienced by registered voters in collecting their permanent voter cards. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
To another burning issue, which is the lingering petrol scarcity. Well, there may be an end in sight to the endless queues at the fuel stations across the country. This assurance is coming from the group CEO of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Mr. Mele Kyari, who says that the country is currently being flooded with enough supply of petrol. Mr. Kyari, in an exclusive interview with Channels Television's correspondent, Sheo Okimbaloye, apologized to Nigerians over the protracted petrol scarcity.
There was a glitch in terms of road failure around certain axes because of the flood that we had. Nobody has control over flood. I'm sure you'll agree with that. Once that flood happened, we are unable to evacuate product from one location to the other efficiently. And mind you, in this country today, our redundancy around 3 days as a result of the huge logistic challenges that we have in the country. Once you have a glitch of 3 days, you will have a challenge of resolving this minimum of 3 weeks. This is very, very understandable. This is the reality that happens. So once you have that situation, a number of things come into play. I apologize for this situation. On behalf of all of us in the stakeholders in the oil and gas industry, definitely not surely exclusive. But having said this, it's unfortunate. It's a glitch. We are responding to this glitch. We will resolve this. I will bring succor and relief to Nigerian people. No doubt about it. No one orchestrated this. We have no benefit in doing this. We have families. We are members of part of this community. We are very, very proud of this country. We would like this country to prosper. We don't want Nigerians to suffer. And, of course, as a matter of conviction that we don't think that anyone should go through this. We are ramping up evacuation today in many depots. On daily basis today now, we are doing more than 70 million liters into the market against the regular evacuation level of up to 63 to 64 million liters. So this will work. And we believe that the ease that we are seeing in many locations today, I don't want to cite specific location, but I know that we are seeing ease across the country. This is easing up. I believe very strongly that within the next 1 week, I'm not saying that you are going to have zero queues in the next 1 week, no. I can't guarantee that because a number of things are out of our control. And, of course, the market forces will determine some of these issues. But I believe that we are going to see substantial and relative ease compared to today in the next 1 week.
And matters of national security, former President Olusegun Obasanjo is showing support for the creation of state police in Nigeria. Speaking at a book launch in Abuja, Chief Obasanjo faults the argument in some quarters that state police can be abused by state governors. According to him, the country can put safeguards in place to prevent such scenarios.
Thank you.
Policing the police is a phrase or ideology apt during these times when there exists a great level of mistrust of the Nigerian police by citizens. The fatal shooting of a lawyer in Lagos, Mrs. Bolanle Rahim, on Christmas Day 2022 by a police officer, ASP Drambi Vandi, is just one of the examples of incidents that have deepened the distrust between the police and Nigerians.
We have AIG Usman Nagogo.
A former chairman of the Police Service Commission, Chief Simon Okeke, is launching a book titled Policing the Nigerian Police, which examines the oversight role of the Police Service Commission and tries to prefer solutions to the problems plaguing the security organization. The array of guests assembled here at the book launch is a pointer to the seriousness of the subject matter. Former President Olusegun Obasanjo notes some policies to improve policing in the country.
Nigeria, by our structure of federalism, should not have a one and unitary police establishment. People have said that state police will be abused by governors. I won't say yes, I won't say no. But can they not be abused by this federal government? And they are actually being abused by the federal government.
The author delves into the constant friction between the Police Service Commission and the Nigeria Police, calling for an amendment of the 1999 Constitution. But the former Inspector General of Police believes this friction is unnecessary as it distracts from more important issues.
It is the body known as Police Service Commission that took over the function of oversight of the police. That was the function that they defined should be done by the Police Service Commission. Until the military took that section of oversight of the police boss and handed it over to the CNC.
The Police Service Commission can escalate the discussion, the conversation to say, let's look at the capacity of the men that we are bringing into the system.
Whoever wins the upcoming presidential election has a tough job on their hands, top of which is finding solutions to the multi-headed security problems in the country. And some say a good place to start is embarking on an exhaustive reform of the Nigeria Police. Linda Akibi, Channels Television News.
Well, to end news round, more than 24,000 people have died after a 7.8 magnitude earthquake struck southern Turkey and northern Syria. Some 24.4 million people in Syria and Turkey have been affected by the quake, and global agencies have called attention to survivors to save another catastrophe. Rescue workers are still putting in the work, hoping to retrieve survivors and, more importantly, praying for miracles.
The 7.8 magnitude quake struck near Gaziantep in the early hours of Monday. It was followed by a 7.5 magnitude tremor hours later, around 1:30 local time. Officials said it was not an aftershock. The quake was felt by millions across Turkey, Syria, Lebanon, Cyprus, even Israel. But the epicenter was near the Turkish city of Gaziantep. Authorities declared a state of emergency and called on residents not to use mobile phones, especially those within the areas of the quake. They've also called for people to allow rescuers coordinate operations. And as rescue teams scrambled on with the search and rescue, and where possible recovery, rescue aircraft have been sent to the affected areas. Residents in the Turkish city of Diyarbakir describe what they've witnessed.
I was sleeping when my wife suddenly woke me up. The quake was very severe, very scary. We were hearing sounds from all over the place. It took almost 2 minutes until the shaking stopped. There are people still trapped under rubble. I have a friend living in this apartment. His children were rescued from the top floor, but only his daughter broke an arm. We'll see what happened to those living on the ground floor. May God give us a speedy recovery.
Hundreds of people are still believed to be trapped under the rubble. Authorities say nearly 900 buildings were destroyed in Turkey's Gaziantep and Kahramanmaraş provinces, placing the total number of collapsed buildings at 1,718, with more than 5,300 people wounded. Meanwhile, as Syria's President Bashar Assad chaired an emergency meeting, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte announced a Dutch search and rescue team will join the hunt for survivors in Turkey and Syria. In a tweet, he also shared his condolences to the President of Turkey. On his part, Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis says Greece will also be mobilizing its resources to help assist the affected areas immediately. Leaders of Serbia and Sweden have also promised to send help to the region. The earthquake also rocked neighboring Syria, Lebanon, and Cyprus.
And that's News Round, a recap of stories that made headlines during the week. Many thanks for watching. I'm Ayo Tunde Balogun.